Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. And a simple question today is who has all the cards? Because if President Trump had all the cards, then we would have the Ukrainian delegation would have got on the next flight available out of Poland towards the U.S., and they would have come and they would have signed whatever President Trump had. They wouldn't have even tried to work with the U.S. delegation in Poland or in Kiev. They would have went directly to President Trump and thanked him so much for everything he's doing, and they would have signed the dotted line without hesitation. In any case, we got quite a bit of pushback from the Ukrainians leading up to this amorphous document, which was supposed to be signed by the 27th. And also, we got, changes to the deadline. So, and we even got these comments from Marco Rubio that the document itself was a living, breathing creature, and we had to allow that creature to come to life. And eventually, when that creature took shape and form, then it would be the right time to sign this document. And so the initial thing that President Trump was trying to do is, okay, Russia, you sign this. Okay, Ukraine, you sign this. And then we will work out the details in together. So President Trump, who had skipped the whole Budapest meeting with President Putin, basically was trying to get to a peace deal with a machete and trying to cut through all the details, everything that had to be worked through in order to get to the summit. He just wanted to put out the summit and wanted everyone to get there. Well, in order to get to an agreement, you have to start from a basic framework and work your way up, and then finally you get whatever, the 28 points, the 25 points, the 11 points, the 8 points, whatever. But the important thing is that this document is part of the conclusion of a process. So anyway, the U.S. said, okay, we're done with processes. We're done with sitting down and talking with people and trying to hammer out something. We're just gonna get to the deal, and they're gonna accept it because it's me, Donald Trump, President of the United States, who's imposing this on both sides. So, the Russians had made some comments at the beginning that that they saw some possible elements that they could pull from, and they also confirmed that they had nothing to do with the creation of this document. Something Marco Rubio contradicted, saying that the 28 points was given to the U.S. by the Russians, that it was a Russian plan. So anyway, we not only heard that there was 28 points put out, but there were multiple plans sent in different directions. So the U.S. wanted the Ukraine to agree to one of those possible plans without even discussing the details. And of course, both the Russians and the Ukrainians will look at the details, and they're not, they want to go through a process. They don't want to just get a document imposed, an agreement imposed on them. So anyway, President Trump had the idea that he had all the cards and that Ukraine was basically pending from a thread, and if the U.S. were to let that go, Ukraine would collapse into nothingness. Meanwhile, Ukraine is thinking it may be the other way around. So we're going to take a look at who has the cards here. And first we have Marco Rubio. He came out after the meeting. We had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress. Progress towards what? Progress in what is a generic statement. And he is not looking very hopeful. He's not smiling. He's in a, kind of a defensive posture. And we have a delegation here. I don't know if these are the U.S. Members of the U.S. delegation, but you see there's no smiles, there's no happiness, head bows. Looks like they just came out of the principal's office after, being chewed out by the principal. There's really you don't see anyone talking to each other. It's just all looks like blank stares. So we thought that the U.S. had all the cards and that Ukraine was going to have to just accept whatever the U.S. put in front of them. Well, we have the Europeans pushing back, and so the U.S. put out a plan to the Ukrainians, and in between, the Europeans said, hey, wait a minute, we're not going along with that, and the Ukrainians have refuged themselves with the Europeans. Here we have the Irish minister. There cannot be any agreement where land is taken or ceded by force. Okay, among other things that were said. So we know that the territory issue is one where the Europeans and the Ukrainians will agree on 100%, that they don't want any discussion of ceding territory. That was one of the key points of this 28-point plan. And we have the information being put out by President van der Leyen of the European Union. And so she states basically the same thing. First, borders cannot be changed by force. Second, as a sovereign nation, there cannot be limitations on Ukraine's armed forces. Third, basically, Ukraine as a sovereign country can choose its own destiny, whether it wants to be a part of the EU or NATO or both. So the Europeans are pushing back, and we have one activist, German activist here, very pro-Ukraine, stating the U.S. arrived at the negotiations with an ultimatum. If you don't support the plan, then you're on your own. And so that definitely proved to be that rigid attitude of we have all the cards, you have no cards, basically sunk this agreement at the very beginning. And then now we see additional comment about President Trump. I don't know the date of this, but this is also from this individual Hans Jürgen Naudit, a German activist on behalf of or in favor of Ukraine. And he states, Russia controls 50% of all mega accounts, and Putin personally controls Trump. So then, now that President Trump put out a kind of a wishy-washy 28-point agreement that he was using to try to find some median point between the two sides, we get this, Putin personally controls Trump. So now Trump is basically a Russian stooge, according to the most pro-Ukrainian supporters. And then we have here Stefanchuk, who talks about the red lines and the whole territorial issue is key. And Stefanchuk is the head of the Ukrainian Rada. He's basically the only, the highest Ukrainian official who's recognized by the Russians. So for the Russians, he should be the president of Ukraine, because when they declared martial law, it didn't mean that, according to the Russians, that Zelensky continued as president. It meant that the Rada would take control of Ukraine until there were elections. So anyway, here is the guy basically that the Russians say this is the real authority in Ukraine, and he's saying that everything that the Russians have taken as far as land goes is Ukrainian. And here we have the, I'll leave all the links below. This is the Swedish finance minister, basically saying that everything that Russia is currently occupied, she calls it temporarily occupied Ukraine, and she mentions that Crimea is Ukraine, Luhansk is Ukraine, Donetsk is Ukraine. So the Europeans have completely ignored the democratic processes that went on in those oblasts in which they separated from Ukraine to form part of Russia. And so basically, these are the individuals who don't care about international law because self-determination is more important than territorial integrity. So the self-determination of peoples. So anyway, basically we have this love-in with the Ukrainian individuals. So anyway, basically the Europeans and the Ukrainians are organizing around their key powers. So we had Zelensky speaking to this forum. We have Stefanchuk, the head of the Rada, basically the only person the Russians recognize as the leader of Ukraine. So basically they're saying that there will be no agreement at all. There's no ceding of territory. And the Russians say that the 4 oblasts in Crimea are Russian. So there's no point in which the two sides meet. And President Trump had the idea that somehow because he had all the cards, the Ukrainians were going to bow to that. So let's take a look at the front line in the area of Pokrovsk. And the whole issue is what really is the legitimate information about what's going on? How are they going to make decisions? Who's making decisions? So there's quite a bit of confusion. But anyway, I will illuminate that point here. So we have Pokrovsk, which according to the military summary channel is completely surrounded by the Russians. So Pokrovsk basically fell to Russia except a few streets, and Mirnograd, which is another part of this urban area, is in the process of falling, and the Russians are taking that. Here's another map from Calibrated. So here again we have Russia as encircling Mirnograd and basically has taken all of Pokrovsk. And here we have the deep state map. Basically, the Russians have not encircled. In fact, they're only surrounding this area on 3 sides, but the gray area is quite immense. So if you take out the gray area, the Russians are just in the southernmost part of Pokrovsk. They're not in Mirnograd. They don't even control Novoekonomichne. They're not in Rodinske. If we go to Rodinske up here, the Russians have been steadily taking territory there according to geolocated information. And here we have no presence of the Russians in Rodinske. So President Trump not only has the problem that he doesn't have all the cards, but he's not dealing with a full deck. So President Trump, in order to finish this conflict, he's not only going to have to work through all the Ukrainian opposition, the leadership at least, and the European opposition, but he's going to have to work through all this disinformation. Anyway, we look at here another comment from Hans Jurgen Naudit. Ukrainian forces have cleared the center of Pokrovsk. Russian troops are failing to consolidate their grip on the city. Without Trump, without Trump, the Russians will lose. So, anyway, he is basically saying that the Russians aren't even in Pokrovsk, at least they may be just in the southern part. And you can see a large gray area. So, according to him, the Russians aren't even in Pokrovsk. So, like I say, Donald Trump has two challenges to show that he has all the cards, and also to try to get a full deck. Because if you're not even dealing with reality, then you're not dealing with a full deck. So currently, here is another point. The actual Ukrainian people are supporting the negotiated peace. We have 70% of the Ukrainians support a negotiated peace as soon as possible. So basically, the Ukrainians are willing to let go of this territory, knowing that basically they are ethnic Russians. So that would actually help them to consolidate what is actually Ukraine. And we go down here for even more. This is a poll taken by Gallup. And so here's the text at the beginning. Most Ukrainians now favor ending the war with Russia through negotiations, as support for fighting until victory has dropped sharply. So anyway, the support of fighting until total victory has gone from 73% to 22%. So the Ukrainians are not supportive of continuing the conflict. So President Trump has an ally. It's the Ukrainian people. They can support him. However, with all the waffling and back and forth, the Ukrainians have lost faith in Washington. So basically, they approve of the leadership. 15%, 16% of the Ukrainians approve of what Washington is doing. So basically, we see here that this is the last challenge for President Trump. First, to show that he has all the cards. Second, to try to get a full deck, to get everyone on the actual real information on the front line. And third, to get the Ukrainian people back supporting him and his efforts. So that is quite a tall order for President Trump. So currently, President Trump does not have all the cards. The Ukrainians, in a sense, have all the cards because they continue to push back on any peace efforts that President Trump has decided to take. Of course, you can say, but they fully supported the unconditional ceasefire. Okay, but that is not a peace deal. That is just basically a halt to the fighting, which is something different. So anyway, President Trump does not have any of the cards according to the Ukrainians, and they have shown that. Now, how does President Trump show that he has all the cards? Basically, he can do what he could have done on January 20th, and that is cut off all support, remove the CIA, all the officials, U.S. officials from Ukraine, remove all financial support coming from any U.S. NGO, from the Pentagon, from any foundation. He can make that illegal. Also, he can remove them from the SWIFT system. He can carry out sanctions on Ukraine. He can stop the sharing of intelligence. He can stop battlefield assessments that come from Germany and battlefield orders that come from Germany. So there's plenty of cards that Trump has that he has not played. And so if he really wants to show that he has all the cards, he's going to need to do that. But if he continues down this path of mamsy-pamsy, um, back and forth, flip-flop, negotiations, then he will fail. So the conclusion of this video is President Trump has no cards if he's not going to play the ones he has, and Ukraine has all the cards because it has the rare earths, it has the total control, political control of the people, and has the information control of the people. So until the people get all the information about what's actually happening, they'll continue to basically support this effort, and if they didn't support it, they would have carried out another Maidan type overthrow, but they haven't done that. So anyway, we will see whether President Trump really wants to exercise any of the cards he has, but if he wants to show that he has the cards, he has to use them. And so that is the conclusion for today. If you like this video, please hit the like button. I'd like to hear from you. Please leave comments below. And so we'll see where this goes. But currently, President Trump is crashing out in this whole peace deal. And I think this has been going to become a total failure of U.S. efforts. And so President Trump will have to go back to the chalkboard. And so that is it for today. Thank you for joining me, and hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.